day. I wasn't sure how it was going to be. Oh, and that's very terrible day. Good day. Let's go with it. Is this being broadcast? I had some.
I'll just make a statement that we're calling a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners and Board of Education to order September 22nd, 2025. Turn it over to Chair Robin Whitaker.
Thank you, Mr. Barbie. I would like to call to order the Stanley County Board of Education, our special called meeting for Monday, September 22nd, 2025. We welcome those of you who are here and also those who are with us live stream. We are live streaming this tonight. So if you want to be heard, you will need to pick a mic up and use it. If not, it will be so faint, even if they turn their volume up all the way, they probably will not be able to hear you well. So I just encourage you to use the mic if you will. The mics are already on. Elliot's made those live. So if you'll make sure you just use the mic, that would be great. Well, it's not coming through here. It's only for the live stream. These are not going through the here, no. So we'll just have to talk loud. It is just for the live stream. Um, First we have is just the approval of our agenda. So I'll just entertain a motion to approve our agenda as presented. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Our agenda is approved. First, I'd like just to do some opening remarks, if it's okay with your board, Mr. Barbie.
Do we have invocation first?
We can have an invocation, and I have that on my agenda, and I skipped right over it. I figured you probably had it on yours too. Do you? Would you like for me to do the invocation?
If you would like.
All right. If you'll all bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the day. We thank you for bringing us together tonight. Lord, we ask you just to bless our leaders. Lord, that you would give us all wisdom, you would give us understanding, and Lord, you would give us the ability where we can unite and work together for our schools and for our children. I ask you, God, just to guide our hearts and our minds so that every decision that we make, Lord, we know is in the best interest of our county and it's in the best interest of our future generations. We ask you just to grant us courage, give us clarity, and a spirit of cooperation. And God, we just ask all this in your name. Amen. Thank you, Mr. Barbie, for reminding me of that. First, I'd just like to say that um, I'm going to start out by I'm not going to talk about any numbers or any spreadsheets, and I'll try to talk loudly so those of you in the back will be able to hear. But I just want to start out with maybe what our children face every day. You know, we have a lot of our students that walk into our schools, and they're going into schools that are older than their grandparents. That we have a lot of schools that fall into that category. At times, they go into classrooms where they may have a leak in that classroom that day because of an issue with the roof. There may be some issues with heat and air that day. It could be that that classroom is just overcrowded because the spaces that we use today in our older schools were never meant for to be used for today's classrooms with the size that we need. But I feel like that our teachers and our admin, they really do what they can. I think they go into those classrooms every day and they work a little bit of miracle for us. Um, there are things that they can't do though. They can't fix crumbling walls. They can't fix crumbling bricks. They can't handle outdated wiring. They can't fix the HVAC, and they can't expand the classrooms that we need sometimes that are already too small. But that's what this need-based grant, and this is why this need-based grant matters. Um, this may be the only chance in this generation, I don't know, for us to have something like this approved. I just want to say, though, that this grant is not about pitting one end of our county against the other. It's not about this board, it's not about the Board of Commissioners, but I feel like what it is about, it's about that this county has sat still for 23 years and we have not built a new school or a replacement school in that time frame. It is about, though, that these two elected boards need to unite and work together. And I feel like I say that every time we get together, guys. Um, it's about us joining forces. We can't do it alone, and you can't do it alone. It takes both of these boards working together. So I ask you tonight to just listen to our presentation. Our request is that you approve both of the applications that we're going to have in front of you, that you not do it as board members, you don't do it for the political side of it, but you do it for the children of Stanley County. I feel like that we need to give them more than just patched roofs. We need to give them more than band-aids, which I feel like what we've been doing for the last 20 some years. Um, we all use the phrase, we're tired of kicking that old rusted can down the road. I truly am so tired of that phrase. I feel like we use that all the time. So we just ask you to act not only on behalf of our students, but also that you act on behalf of Stanley County. Because to me, we are demonstrating not only to our county, but we're demonstrating to industries that education is a priority in our county and that it's a foundation for long-term economic growth for us, which I know is important. So before we begin, I do just want to say that I thank Dr. Dennis and his staff for the time and effort they've put in. I thank our board for the time and effort that they've given. Um, Ashley Dennis, who will be doing our presentation tonight from Mosley Architect, came from Raleigh tonight to do our presentation. And one other thing, I just say that we are fortunate that we did receive resolutions from three municipalities who are supportive of the grants that we are going to put in front of you. Those are Locust City Council, Oakburg Board of Commissioners, and Stanfield Board of Commissioners. And if any of you guys are here, I would love it if you would stand up. Anybody from those three municipalities, I know there are a couple people here tonight. We thank you guys for taking your time to come. I know you guys gave us questions. We emailed those back to you today. Hopefully, you've had an opportunity to look at those. Ashley will probably answer a majority of those during her presentations, but the ones that she does not answer, we'll make sure that we get those answered tonight. And once again, if you'll make sure you use your mic so that the people who are watching live stream will be able to hear you. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Dennis from Mosley Architect, and she is going to do our presentation for you.
Thank you. So thank you to both boards, Chairman, Madam Chair, for letting me have this opportunity to do this presentation. I did this presentation for the Board of Education to kind of walk through what we as a firm have done. We originally we were hired to do a facility condition assessment that would then help drive what the needs were related to the needs-based grant. And I apologize to anybody who is listening. I'm trying to talk for everybody in the back, so turn it down if you are listening from home, but I will do my best to have a teacher's voice here. So the needs-based grant is a grant that is put out by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. It is based out of lottery funds, and it is exclusively a needs-based grant. So there are criteria of how you apply or what you are applying for. The applications opened August 18th of this year, and they close October 3rd. So we're obviously getting to the end here for the applications to be submitted. And then obviously we have this meeting here tonight following that board meeting, which a lot of these slides are from. So the capacity information that came out of not only our study, but the numeric study, and that study was done by a demographer that looked solely at numbers of students. And so really it shows that the growth is on the western portion of the county, and by 2033, 34, there really is going to be an excessive need from across all of the western schools. And so that was why the school board knew that there was a need here. There was a need for some way to address this influx of students that would be coming. And so how do you kind of um, intervene for this severe overcrowding? So this is across the county. These numbers are not solely just for a portion of the county, but this shows you that the number of students that the county will have by that 32, 33 school year. And sorry, I can't sit and talk. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work. So these are the numbers, and this is solely from that numerics report. But really, what we're going to see as I move through these slides is that at the elementary school and middle school, you have the largest number of students, and then you're also going to see at the high school level. So this is really gives you kind of all the things that are in that numeric study in kind of a one across spreadsheet. And what it's showing is student capacity is what the school or the buildings will hold. It is truly what the amount of students you can have within those campuses. And so everything in that kind of green portion, that's passed. And these are all based off of month 2 data so that we're seeing the same numbers. The only place that is different is at that 25, 26, that is based off of day 10 numbers. So we had to pick a point to stop. We weren't at the month 2 numbers, so those numbers are true numbers from day 10. And so you can see that this is where all of the schools are. You already have a issue on the elementary school level with some red, and then you see that there's starting to be a bust in the middle school level. The area that you'll see where there's a big red box around for year 32, 33, and then those numbers. So the district added the addition at Indy. That was not pulled into the numerics numbers. That had not opened yet. So there is no true data for that projection. That is not what I do. I cannot pretend to even be a demographer. So what I was able to do was pull together those, do the math on the 3 schools and what those totals were. So really all of that number in that red there is showing you that those across those 3 schools, that will be the percentage. And I know that's a little bit confusing because it doesn't match the rest of those, but I thought it was important to show you that across the 3, you will still have that bust in the elementary school numbers for students and the capacity. So we're going to move into another slide. And so this is the legend that kind of helps you understand what happens here. So the facility condition assessment, which was really the portion that Mosley did, was to go to all of the school campuses on the western portion and assess the conditions of the buildings. And that is at many different levels. But to explain this, this is really taking what the 20%, 40%, 60%, 80, and 100, that is saying that to make this new, how much money are we going to have to spend? And if you don't have to spend anything, if it's it basically if you're spending $0, it is a 5. And then if at 1, if the basis, if you're at like a 20% of condition, then that makes it a 1. And so looking at that across this board, and again, I understand that this is like an eye chart, but that's why the colors are there to help everyone understand that what we're seeing is that Oakboro is and Ridgecrest, which is a closed campus, both of those schools or campuses are really at the end of their life in the facility conditions. And that is everything from interior finishes to space sizes. So we base all of our space size comparisons from a new school based on what NCDPI says an elementary school of that size should have. And so say a school has a 900 square foot classroom, then we're right in line with what a third through fifth grade classroom is supposed to be. Now, if we start seeing 500 square foot classrooms, which we do in some of these older schools, then that is not in line with what NCDPI says a educational space needs to be sized accordingly. So those are why the rankings start dropping in some of our older campuses. Now, another thing that you may notice is so Indy, we have Indy Elementary and then we have the new building. We obviously do not want to rank the entire campus off just the old building, nor do we want to rank that off just the new building. So we gave those two different scores. Same with Locust. Locust has 3 kind of buildings that are at very different levels of need. And so all 3 of those are ranked separately. So you can see across the board, really, Oakboro raised its hand on the fact that the needs based on the facilities itself and nothing else are where we needed to show some attention. So now we're going to kind of roll into our recommendation, but I do want to stop for a moment and talk about some of the assumptions or basis we based a lot of this off of. So new construction at $450 a square foot. That is based off of what we are seeing in the market. So I design schools every day. We bid schools on a regular basis. We have a lot of relationships across the state with contractors who tell us what things are costing. And so that number there not only shows what we are seeing in the market, but also what we are seeing with some escalation, because we're not going to bid this school today. So it's not fair for me to give you numbers related to that. And I see your hand. Do you mind if I finish and then we can ask questions just so I don't lose my train of thought? I appreciate that. So the next thing would be demo and abatement. So at Oakboro, we're going to have demo and abatement of the existing building. So those numbers, it's a range. All of that is based off of standards that we see across the state. Demo costs something, but abatement costs something. If you only have a little bit of abatement, you're probably at the lower end. If you're at the higher end, you may have underground fuel tanks that we might have to take into consideration of removing. So all of those kind of fall into that range that we need to make sure that we're assessing related to that number that will show how that falls into that. The next item is project cost or soft cost. So it is not fair as an architect for me to walk in here and tell you how much something cost from a construction standpoint only. That is not fair to you as county commissioners, nor to the school board or to the citizens of Stanley County, for the reason that there are a lot more things that go into opening a school, whether it be an addition or a new building, that we need to make sure we are telling you to hold funds for. And so these things are things like survey, geotech. So geotech's when you're doing borings into the ground to make sure what kind of soils you have. Structural engineers base their design off of that. Design fees across the board, from our design fees to any other groups that are brought in. Special inspections, that's just part of construction. There's a group, it's a third party that comes in and makes sure things are built accordingly. Commissioning is required by code. So a third party commissioning agent would come in, and that is very much like that special inspection, in that they come in and make sure that the systems are being installed per design. And then FF&E. So what that is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So things from the furniture, as in the desk and the chairs that the students are in, to the microwaves that are in the teacher's break room. We want to make sure that there is funds in there for that, so that on day one, there is a fully functioning school or fully functioning addition, and nobody is wondering where the funds are for all of those things. And then technology, obviously that is a huge part of the design of the school, but there's technology that the school system will be providing that they need to make sure that they have whatever kind of technology, from a smart board to a TV, those kind of things, have a budget line item for that. And then there's just things that we're not providing mobiles for anything, so that number is not in there. We're not considering moving expenses, or the stocking. So, how much paper it takes to start a new school, things like that. Those are things that are usually held by a different budget item that don't fall into the construction realm. So our recommendation, based on the facility condition assessment, based on the numerics numbers that show that, how do we solve two things, right? How do we solve the fact that there are crumbling buildings that students are in, and that you have an influx of students that are coming in from all of these neighborhoods on the western portion of your county? And so our recommendation is a 700 student elementary school at that Oakboro site. That gives us some opportunities to not only have space to build this, so we're not having to recommend relocating students, because the site does lend itself to provide that space to build a school while students are there. But also it provides the seats that are needed within the county. Also an addition at West Stanley Middle School to increase to 950. So the core spaces at West Stanley Middle School, those are things like the media center, the cafeteria, the kitchen. Those all are already sized to be at around 950. So adding on would really be more in the realm of classroom spaces, and a lot of those specialty spaces that, though, again, to the point of teachers are miracle workers often, that school is designed to be an elementary school, or a K-8. And so there's a lot of those truly functioning middle school spaces that are not there, and they're being done in much smaller spaces than one would see in a new school. So a lot of the spaces that are in this square footage for that middle school are those specialty spaces, like a larger band room, larger science rooms, things like that, that allow the students to do those more high-tech things that are not maybe able to be done in those smaller spaces. So the elementary school and the middle school, again, we kind of talked about all those line items, kind of what those are based off of. So that construction cost is based off that 450. The demo and abatement, we're obviously not going to have that at the middle school. We will have that at the elementary school. And that's based off the square footage for the existing Oakboro, which is 47,600. And then the soft cost, that's about a 20%. That's kind of the number we like to use off of the construction costs, because that's usually how we start these things. We're not going to be exactly sure what they're going to cost, but we have a really good idea of a range for percentages. So that's what that soft cost number is a percentage of the construction cost, and then the full project cost. So the grant itself, because of the way it's written, you can write a grant for an elementary school, a middle school, or a high school. Each of those has a pot of money. So the highest amount for an elementary school is 42, the highest amount for a middle school is 52, and the highest amount for a high school is 62. We're obviously not having that conversation about the high school. We're really just talking about the two of those. For the middle school, because of the way they've written the grant and the way they've laid out in their FAQs on NCDPI's website, you can write the grant for the largest amount. So you can write it for the $52 million for the middle school, and then utilize it for everything you need for the middle school, and then roll the rest into a project, as long as you've identified what that is. And so for this, we're identifying that as the 700 square foot elementary school, so that you can use everything after that middle school addition for that elementary school. And so because of the tier that you fall in, Stanley County has a 5% match. So that 5% match of that 52 is 2.6 million. So then that puts that at 54.6 million. Obviously, the total project cost is above that, so there is a difference. I'm sure there will be some questions about we can get into, but there is a difference of just under $30 million. So this just goes into some of the things related to that middle school, elementary school thing. But the other thing to point out is they do require 2 applications. So you cannot write one for a middle school and then just in the sidebar say we're also going to do an elementary school or vice versa. You have to actually do 2 applications, identify what your needs are. In this particular case, the elementary school is actually the thing that is the top priority because of the fact that there is so much need in safety, in funds that are being shifted to it to keep the building going, just in the deterioration that we saw in our facility condition assessment. And it also checks a lot more boxes within NCDPI's grading system related to the needs-based grant. So they do set out criteria, and safety and funds being spent on and things like that are really some of the priorities they're putting into it, because a lot of the basis for this needs-based grant was the state saw that across the board in North Carolina there was an excessive need for older schools, and in our counties that don't just have an influx of money like Wake and Charlotte Meck, there was a lot of band-aiding to keep buildings going. And so this was their way of providing the funding to make sure that there was an ability to build new facilities. A question we were asked by the school board, but I think it's nice to share with you guys as well, is so the needs-based grant has kind of changed over the years. So in 2021, they changed to this whole model where there are the pots, the elementary, the middle, and the high school of what you can ask for. Before that, there was some weird stuff with you could only get $15 million and they were going to hold all of your lottery funds for 5 years. So nobody liked that. Nobody was really participating. So they did all of the rules. They changed the general statute. And what they did was they changed it so there's now a 0% match counties. There's 5% match counties. Like I mentioned, that's where you guys are. And then there's above 5%. So we have a 15, 25, and a 35. So who has applied for this grant? That was the question. And so all of our 0% match counties, there's 14 of them, and they all have applied and been awarded. So it doesn't mean they can't apply again, because you can apply 3 years after you have received a grant, and some of them are starting to come back up. So I know for a fact that some of them are putting together applications, but they have all been awarded. So next we move into our 5% match counties. There are 51 districts. We know that there are some districts that have, or counties that have more than one district in them. So I've provided both of those numbers, but there's 51 districts, 45 counties. 30 of those districts have been awarded. 4 of those were prior to 2021, so I didn't want them to be left out. But it means that they are awarding to the realm that you are in the little category that Stanley County is in this 5% match. They are awarding to these counties. This is not, this is not something that you don't have an opportunity to submit for. And then just because we want to make sure we're covering everybody, everybody over 5%, those larger percentage matches, there's 41 districts, 34 counties. 9 of those have been awarded. 2 of those were prior to the change in 2021. So they're even awarding to some of the larger percent match counties based on their needs as well. So just some stats about Oakboro. It has just under 15 acres. There is a multitude of times that the buildings were built, the oldest obviously being in 1930 and 40. So the really older buildings that we're seeing a lot of that deterioration, but the 1960s and 74 buildings, there are still major needs in those as well. And then just the architecture and how things have changed. In 1970, some architects thought it would be really nice to do some open floor plans or semi-open floor plans. And I'm sure there was a lot of basis for that, but it's a really hard environment to teach in. when, we're here trying to hear each other and we don't have a lot of children running around and making noise. And so being able to teach and for children to absorb that, obviously there's some things that that doesn't serve as well from a learning environment perspective. And then just that deterioration. So we've got a leaking building envelope, a lot of structural cracking, which I know it's been brought up on multiple occasions, even in this meeting, but lack of sight lines for security. Obviously, security is a huge part of it. I never thought that would be part of my job to have to talk about or think about or, stay up at night thinking about, but that is part of the world we live in related to school design. And so making sure that we're thinking about that even when we look at older designs that maybe didn't design around those concerns. ADA issues, similarly, that was not something that was thought about in the 1940s, but it's something that we have to think about now. And then the undersized spaces, science labs that don't meet state requirements. So even though we're talking about an elementary school, there is still middle school students on this campus currently, and those middle school labs don't meet the requirements that NCDPI sets out. And then we have a lot of kitchen equipment failing, other systems failing, and no AC in the gymnasium. And then on West Stanley's campus, we have a good amount of acreage. It was built much more recently, again, designed to be that K-8. There are mobiles on site. And then the addition would house additional teaching spaces. The gymnasium is a little undersized from an athletic perspective. It may be something to look at renovation, but obviously we want to look and make sure we have the right amount of athletic space. There is no auditorium, and a middle school this size would have an auditorium. Obviously, a K-8 that was smaller wouldn't. So not a knock on the design itself, but something that probably needs to be added for a middle school. And then undersized art spaces and other specialty spaces for their electives. So anticipated schedule, obviously that's something to think about. We've already talked about when the application needs to go in on October 3rd. We've already finalized the study that's in the board's hands, and we want to submit the grant on time. So even if it's October 3rd, it has to go in that day. And then anticipated award just based on what we've seen in years past. They usually award around in November. And then, obviously if the school board is ready, they would want to put an RFP out as soon as possible to start that design, then award the designer. And then the design phase would be just around a year. You would bid that out, and then construction would be just over a year, about 14 months. We think that both of those projects could run concurrently just based on the size of them. So that would be for both the addition at the middle school and the new elementary school, and then have move in the year of 2028. So I've talked a lot, and I know that I had to do a little hush. I apologize about that. Just that way I can get all that out and then turn that over for questions. So.
Mr. Hatley, did you have a question?
The land cost. Have y'all identified property or buying property or property costs for these projects?
Are you talking about for Oper would be built on the same site that our current Oper school is on, but would be built on the back side? And the addition at West Stanley Middle School, there's property there. There's room there for that addition. We would not have to acquire any additional property for either one of those projects.
I do have a question about Oakboro. The playground is in the back of the school currently. For some reason, I'm thinking that I've been told that if a school is built there, that it would be built on the current playground or where it's located. Is that true?
Yeah, so we haven't designed anything, but I can just say that the designer, whoever it is, would look to see if that could be something that could be avoided, or if that makes sense as the simplest and best solution, a temporary playground or a relocation of that playground would obviously happen prior, because Though we talk about safety from a new construction, we also want to talk about safety from having construction occurring on a site with students and staff. And so making sure there's a clear divide. So we wouldn't want students to walk through a construction site to go to a playground. So that would be something that would be considered by that team and make sure that it was, and that would fall in the soft cost to provide temporary playground to then have it located later.
Do we have any idea of what a playground would cost to be moved to a new location?
I don't have exact numbers. I mean, we've done it on multiple projects, just with contractors. It's in the low, like maybe like $10,000 just to relocate. So, obviously now if you wanted to build the new one, that's obviously has a lot more cost to it.
Okay, couple more questions. Currently, Oakboro is a STEM school. Would the new school continue to be a STEM school?
Yes, the new school would be a STEM school. So what it would, Ms. Raper's in the audience, she can speak up. So essentially what we do is there would be a districted area for the school, and there will be a percentage that would be choice. And I've spoken with superintendents from other districts, local districts, on how they do that. And it depends on what you set your kind of radius up for your district and how would your choice percentage is.
Okay, and currently the STEM school, does it require busing of students?
They do have hub stops currently at the STEM school.
I don't understand what hopscotch is.
Okay, well, what they do is they hopscotch to their base school on a bus, and then there's one bus that will pick a group of kids up and bring them to the school. So, like if you lived in the Indy Western area, you would go to your base schools. They could pick you up, and then they would be brought. There's a couple different ways they do it, but yeah, that's the way the hub stop works. Is you go to a central location, and then they bring you to the STEM school from your area.
Okay, and Oakboro currently has how many students?
What's my current number? It's 373 or something. Within a few, yeah.
But it can accommodate how many currently?
Got that on there.
So its current capacity, it could handle for 12 and it has 358 based
Do,
on that day 10 number.
do we have students that want to go to the STEM school but aren't currently allowed to go to the STEM school?
Where's Mr. Gray? What's your wait list right now? So do the students, are they concentrating the lower grades or the higher grades? Okay. Okay.
So I'm making a statement. You can build what is it, 700 student school? You gonna be able to fill that 700 student school?
Yeah, because right now it's all choice. There's no district. So the district's created to alleviate pressure off the other areas. That will pull in students in a districted area and then take into account the number of students that we put for the choice. So right now it's all choice. There's no district to it. And so we would have districted kids, which you already fill, and then the choice would fill the rest of.
You need to redistrict to do that?
Yes. You would need to make a district.
Well, I got a question. I can't believe that y'all hadn't figured out where Oakland School would be put and sit up in the air, um, where it's going. And, I just counted some numbers that we got projected students for 33 year, which is 7 year down the road, total of 9,961 students in the county. We've had that many in the county, or more than that in the county before. So, and we worked at, we had over 1,000 students at West Stanley at one time. And so, I'm just kind of wondering what's shifting around here. And would we be better off if we're going to have to redistrict or anything, just going back to all K-8 schools?
Well, I mean, I can't answer the K-8. We haven't studied that, nor has that been a topic of conversation. But as far as what you did in the past was you added, of course, mobile units. And then you did something, to my understanding, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, when you get high capacity and you start adding mobiles, you start filling classrooms. And don't let me forget, K3 class size plays in this now as well, when you did not have K3 class size back then, that particular mandate. But they were taking classrooms that weren't being used and you were turning them into classrooms for maybe art, maybe music, some other different things. And you were putting, they call it art on a cart, some other stuff like that. And I would say that is not an advantageous way to run a school, nor is an advantageous way to retain and recruit teachers as well, especially when we have neighboring school districts, they can have their own classroom and they can make more money.
And can I just say too, to you, Mr. Barbie, the statement that we don't know where that school's going to go, I don't think that's an accurate statement. We know that school's going on that piece of property, but to know exactly where that school's going to be sitting because there's no design to that school yet. So would you not, would that be correct, Ashley, that we, at this point in it, we would not know exactly where that school is going to be sitting on that piece of property?
That is so I can just say that the process of designing the school is a process. And there's a lot of meetings that go into that, and there's a lot of input and buy-in and things like that. That doesn't happen in the time period that the conversation from the facility assessment to now has occurred. I can tell you with confidence that the school will fit there. So to say that the board doesn't know where it will go, I think they know where it'll go. They might not know what it looks like or what shape it is, but the location is at the rear of the existing school.
There's a lot of room at the rear. There's also a big gully right behind the school too, ditch running through it. So I don't imagine it would go exactly right behind the school. It's going to have to go up on the playground area where baseball and softball fields are. Uh, but
I have a question. So I understand there really truly is a capacity need at West Stanley Middle School. And when I'm looking at the numbers, it looks like though that it's projected that the project could be done in 2028, correct? That's when we move in. But by the year 2032, it looked like the student capacity would be at 949. Is that correct? And then we've got the capacity is actually at 950. So we have 4 good years at not being at capacity. And then when I look at the Oakboro capacity, it looked like we are building a 700 capacity school. And in that same amount of time, we're going to have 325 students short at Oakboro to reach that 700 capacity. So my question is, why are we building such a large school at Oakboro and not a larger addition at West Stanley Middle School to accommodate a larger capacity there?
I think it's a great question. I think what you're missing, Mrs. Crump, in the exploratory scenario that the demographer ran for Oakboro, it captures a lot of the Stanfield School District and it goes and captures some of Locust. So that school is needed to alleviate the crowding on the western end. So it's not just the actual municipality of Oakboro. Right now, we're 105% at Stanfield, and this is after the redistricting to Indy, and at 99%. So 284 choice kids sitting at the Oakboro Elementary School, most of which sit in that exploratory district. The demographer noted that we would need a capacity of 600 to 700 in Oakboro to alleviate the longer term overcrowding that we're experiencing.
I understand that. So then I don't have a clear understanding when the students move into Oakboro in 2028, there will be more than what I have
Yeah, I
questioned.
think I can answer your question.
Okay.
When he did those numbers, that's not with the district. Those are cap numbers.
That's
So,
after the redistricting, there will be more students
oh yeah,
that
yeah,
will
yeah,
be
yeah,
brought in.
yeah. But I
So
thought you were talking about the number as it runs through on the thing with Oakboro.
So the one thing I can say is that goes to that red box above. So the capacity of those three elementary schools is together around just over 1,500. And so by the year 32, 33, it will be 1872. So there that's where that influx of students with that redistricting at the elementary school level will come from, along with the students that will be in the zone for the Oakboro school.
okay, I understand. And my other question is this an all or nothing, both schools, or can the grant be for one or the other or in just West Stanley Middle?
So I will say that the needs are at both. If you split them apart, you will take away the need that is the Oakboro school. Obviously, that the middle school is in need as well, and this is the best way to solve both of them with the best bang for the buck. Um, if you start splitting them up, you can't get the $52 million for the elementary school. You can only get $42 million. So you still have a bust there, and you're not solving anything at the middle school. Um, Same with the fact that if you use all the money at the middle school, you can't solve the problem at the elementary school. So it's to solve the most things at once um, with this application.
I would add to that that Oakboro is the most critical need that we have at this point in the elementary overcrowding. So when I say Oakboro, I mean just capacity on the western end at the K-5 level. It's 16, 17, and 18, I think, is the ADM, the student count that we can have in those classrooms, and that's where the issue is, mainly on top of the development. The schools are just built really small and they're really old. Uh, but Oakboro itself is the most critical need. You could split the applications up. Um, Oakboro is a much better under the guidelines of the state than the middle school itself. They're both stronger together, and it allows. You know, if I'm sitting in your seat or I'm a taxpayer, and we both, as Mrs. Dennis has mentioned, they're both critical needs. This gives us the ability to pocket an extra $10 million to do the middle school by applying for the $52 million grant. So it's essentially going as one. There are two applications, but there's a cover letter and it's submitted as one packet.
Madam
Okay.
Chair.
And I don't want to take too much. I do want to say one thing. One concern that I do have is that I do believe, and I may be wrong, is there $700,000 that have just been spent on fixing a problem at Oakboro Elementary School at the front of the building, and then we're talking about a demo. So
The
that
engineers were going to shut that down. The school was falling down. Maintenance went out last football season and put a ladder on the front wall. The front wall moved. That's a load bearing wall. I don't think you were on the trip when the commissioners all came
I was
out.
on the trip.
Okay, so the front wall moved, and then from the roof. So the loads, and then I think we learned there was a roof built on top of a roof. So that had to be done.
Right. I'm
The
familiar.
30,000. Okay, well, it had to be done to keep the kids in the school and to keep the safety. That's why for all school year, there was $30,000 of lumber to create two fire egresses so that if the building fell, the staff and the students can get out of the building. So again, I think it reiterates the point of how much longer are we as a county going to continue to pour these resources into a building and into a school when we're going to save on the taxpayer longer run by building a brand new school and alleviate our crowding on the western end of the K-5 level.
Can I say too that what's being printed, that $700,000, that is not an accurate number. The contracted price for that was $362,690. Once we paid engineers, we had to pay for material testing, and then I think there was one change order that we had to do that was a little over $10,000. That project ended up being a little over 400,000.
Madam Chair. I have a question. On slide 8 of the presentation, it says that the cost included does not include mobile classrooms. There's 6 mobiles at West Stanley Middle. Has that number been figured into the removal of those mobile units? Is that in the cost of the addition?
No, that's not in the
We
cost.
would remove those and sell them or repurpose them.
What would the cost of that be?
I don't have that right on hand.
Well, I think we need to know.
Was-
For us, a choice STEM school, correct?
Yes.
So you're going to redistrict students from Stanfield and Locust to go to Oakboro STEM school when they may not want to.
Actually, the superintendent I talked to, and I do have the principal, his son goes there. They said that was never an issue when they created the STEM school and moved the kids in because the thing with STEM, and you can speak, I'll let y'all speak about it. It's a desirable option, and it's not a different curriculum like dual language. It's just a different way. They teach the same curriculum as they do at the other elementary schools. It's just a more hands-on type of learning. You want to talk to that or speak to that?
Really it's your approach. It is more hands-on. And like superintendent Dennis said, I went through it with my son. His school, they built a new school right behind his school. It's a STEM
They
school.
wouldn't have to, man.
We're district to go to
How
that
much is it a
school.
little model?
We don't go there by choice, and he goes to STEM. Same type of activity, problem-based activity, in line with what they read. Does that make sense?
And there's also the cross-curricular aspect as well.
Yeah.
I think we need more STEM schools. I think Ridgecrest would be a perfect place. I don't put money in that building because spent a lot of money to add crowd to school with 700 students. I don't like big elementary schools. I don't think they serve a purpose. And so I'd rather see Ridgecrest open back up, remodel it, and I think that would alleviate a lot of all the problem you're talking about up there.
Not according to the demographer, the study that we paid for, that would not alleviate the issues. And I assume that the demographer is an expert in doing that. Well, you might be, that might be your part-time job, Mike. But when we looked at the study with an open mind, we're following the data, we're following the information, and what's the most cost-effective for the taxpayer, and what's going to help us over the long run alleviate some of these issues.
Madam Chair.
I'd like to hear some other board members talk. I think what it boils down to, nobody wants to open a Ridgecrest school. I think that's the whole problem right there, and we'd alleviate a lot of problems if we did. But I'd like to hear some other board members speak if they would.
I would like to speak to that. So I was sworn in on December the 3rd, and the very first meeting that I attended for committees was actually the facilities committee at the time. Now it's CIP. And I do specifically remember the demographer talking to the facilities committee, and Ridgecrest was completely thrown off the table. Oakboro, the facilities committee continued to let the demographer know that the Oakboro Elementary School was the place where a new school was going to go, and that Ridgecrest was not even to be considered. And I will also say this as well, because you guys continue to ask about the STEM. It is going to be a K through 5. The middle school, if I'm under the wrong impression, let me know, but actually 6th, 7th, and 8th grade would no longer be there.
Point of information, there's 67 students at the middle school portion of 6-8. 33 of those are on the Western District that would otherwise be at West Stanley Middle School.
Question. I understand Locust, Stanfield, and Oakboro are growing, but I also know that in particular Locust, part of Locust is Cabarrus County, part of it's Stanley. When you all were looking at housing developments to come up with your projections, did you separate those developments that are in Cabarrus County? And there's 1,104 development that's going to be a 55 plus community, which has no effect on the school system. Were those things taken into consideration, or were you just counting how rooftops and taking a percentage of students per house?
The demographer met with the city manager, Cesar Carrera, and I know at one meeting, Mr. Eford was there and well, and they were delineating exactly which ones were in Stanley County and which ones are in Cabarrus County.
But how did they calculate it?
They show us on a map which ones are in Stanley, which ones in Cabarrus, and that's what the demographer used. He didn't use Cabarrus County numbers.
So you're saying he did not use Cabarrus
Yes.
County? How about the 55 plus community?
Yes, they took that into effect as well, because they let us know, and Locust is very good about this. They're like, these kids will not affect you. This is going to be a 55 plus. These are the ones that will have kids, and these are ones who won't.
It's specifically noted in the study.
I have can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, ma'am. We were able to build 11 classrooms for $4.5 million at Indy that was just completed. And it's a good building. I was really proud of it. So my question, first of all, is how many rooms are we planning? You might have said this, but how many rooms are we planning on adding at West Stanley Middle School?
So I don't have the number of rooms. A lot of that is related to the spaces that are needed beyond what is at West Stanley Middle School. So the difference between the two, and they're really not that far off in relation to the fact that one, you have escalation costs that are built into that as well. So you have to realize that though It was built, I think you opened bids in February of last year, so not that long ago, but we still have to calculate in the fact that we're talking not only probably like 2 years out from that, so we have to build that escalation in. But also, that is an elementary school. It's you just have a double loaded corridor, a very small corridor, because elementary school spaces allow for that. They're our smallest learners, so they're just smaller. When you start looking at middle schools, wider corridors make sense, especially from a circulation standpoint. But the spaces that are needed at West Stanley Middle School are the higher impact spaces, things like science labs, where if you compare a middle school science lab to a general classroom in an elementary school, they are just not the same size spaces nor dollar amount spaces. But again, if they can be built cheaper, then that's great. That money can be shifted somewhere else. But this is what we are seeing for spaces for a middle school.
I'm not trying. I'm a, this is my 40th year teaching. I want to see what's best for our children. I'm not trying to trick you. When I ask these questions, I'm not, I feel like there's tension, but I really want what's best for our children. You have a school, there's not many schools that I've been in that doesn't have a hallway down the middle and rooms adjoining on each side. And being in those rooms, and I've actually drawn up floor plans for a school. You need 750 square feet in each room to accommodate 25, 26, 27. You know, you don't want to get to 30 students. So a school, I don't want to say a school's a school, but the kids are not using lockers anymore. Do you know why? I mean, no, don't answer that. I'm sorry. I don't. They're online. They're doing a lot online now. So textbooks. Matter of fact, I asked my kids in class today. I said, "How many of you raise your hands if you're using a locker?" And only one raised their hand. So that would save. Lockers are expensive. That would save $250,000 just. And they said, "Well, why don't you use a locker?" I said, "Well, uh, we just don't need to." And they have. I don't know if you've felt of your child's book bag lately, but the book bags are. They feel like they're 100 pounds. Uh, Whenever you know what would really help us tremendously if we had a floor plan that you could show us and say, "Hey, do you have one?"
I don't. So this is not to buy a school.
No.
No one has designed this school because the money isn't there. That would not be fair to the taxpayers nor the school board to move forward when there's no money there to do it. So that hasn't happened yet. I can tell you the spaces that are needed, not at this moment. I don't actually have them all written down, but I can tell you that there are spaces needed at the middle school to be able to get to the 950. um, a lot of the spaces that are being utilized as your ag and your family consumer science, those are like 600 square foot spaces. Those spaces are supposed to be based on a new school design, 1200. So those are the spaces that are within that 56,000 square feet that would be laid out. And I am not saying that you won't have classrooms on one side and classrooms on the other side and have the double loaded corridor. I'm saying that to accommodate elementary school students versus middle school students, the approach is just a little bit different.
I've learned through some of my colleagues up in Rowan County, they were building a new school at Knox Middle School, which is right behind the hospital. The initial plan was $81 million. They found out that they could go through NCDPI and see, just like you know, every plan blueprint has to be submitted to NCDPI for safety and everything. What would prevent us? Is it possible that we could use an existing plan from NCD? I know this is going against you, and this
No,
is
no, it's not. We have plenty of
yeah.
plans submitted that to NCDPI. I don't, they would not for the addition, because you would literally be taking a piece and adapting it so extensively that the reason that is there, they call it the clearinghouse, and it is for prototypes. And they allow you to basically go on there and pick a prototype that works for your needs and not adapt it, and then utilize it on a piece of property or an existing property. And so that is what I'm assuming they did. So for an addition, that doesn't work in that way because of the fact that no one submits additions to the clearinghouse. It is solely for new construction or brand new schools. So could you do that for the elementary school? Sure.
That would save 12% of the total cost of I mean, that's the going rate as far as an architect. You said soft
No,
costs would be 20%.
so you still have to pay the architect.
Right.
You just have to pay them to do your design, or pay them to work because there's a lot more that goes to the architect. But and that we don't get 12%, but I like that percentage if I can get that from anyone who's going. No, it's you would save probably around 1.5 to 2% if you're utilizing a prototype, based on what we as architects, so we base everything off a percentage of the construction rate. If we're having to do less work because we are being chosen off the clearinghouse, we drop our percentage of fee, about 1 to 2% on
You
that.
understand that we want something, a good product. We want something that's durable, or we're going to be back here doing this all over again. I probably won't be here. You know, Bill won't be here, but we want something that is durable, that's going to be long lasting. And, things are going to change as far, an elevator. I don't know if we need that. Cathedral ceilings, and I'm just throwing these out. We want something for our kids. We want them to be safe, number one. We want them to learn, and we want good teachers. And right now, as a teacher, I want I want teachers to be able to come here and be in a building where they have water in the bathrooms and they have hot water. And I've taught in Stanley County schools, and I know what it's like. But unless you maintain the buildings, it doesn't matter what you build. And that goes along with discipline and pride. I remember when Mr. Honeycutt used to come, and Jared, I don't think I don't know, but you went to West. They used to come and mow the grass at West Stanley. And I mean, the community, when you have the community to come in and take care of the school, you can look at the schools around Stanley County and you can tell it's some of the schools in the community. And that's what we want, something to be proud of. We don't want our taxpayers to be paying for something that's going to fall apart. And I know I'm not saying your design would, but I just, our kids do need that. They really do. And I think you hear that in my voice. So that's all.
Yeah, I do. I think if we approved both projects, I understand that the commissioners are responsible for shortfalls. Well, we're talking about a shortfall of over $32 million if you count the 5%. And I'm going to ask Andy Lucas, our county manager, what would a quarter cent sales tax bring in, which everybody pays?
Currently, it brings in around $2.8 million a year.
Okay, and what if we approve both these and we had to go out and borrow $28 million?
Well, you'll have to borrow more than that. It's more like 33 million
Okay,
to do this, and you're looking at raising taxes at least 3 cents to do that
okay, 3 cents.
on everybody in the county.
Yeah, and everybody's just gone through a reevaluation. And I was with a gentleman today that lives in Stanfield, and he said, "Have you had a lot of phone calls about tax bills?" And luckily, I haven't. Some of you may have, some of the other commissioners. I don't think we've had an overabundance, but everybody got their tax card in the mail. And he says, "Man, my taxes are more than $1,000 a year." And in my opinion, there's three groups of citizens. There's a group of citizens that want community schools, and they also want Ridgecrest reopened. there's a group of citizens that want consolidation, but I think the biggest group we have are the tax-paying group that don't want their taxes to go up any more than what they already have gone up. So that's kind of we don't have 32 or 33 million dollars in our general fund just sitting there waiting to pay for the school system. We've got, we do have money, but a lot of it's already been committed. And once it's committed, it's committed. But my concern is both projects, we're looking at borrowing 33 plus million dollars from the taxpayers.
Well, let's note that the general statutes require 100% funding and funding of the building and maintenance of the schools by the county government, and that's your responsibility. I noted in the county manager's recommended budget that you went 3/4 of a cent above the revenue tax neutral, which brings about $4 million, I think is what you estimated in your report. Your recommended budget, which is posted online, about another 1.6 in sales tax revenue. And it was noted that the 3/4 of a cent raise, staying above revenue neutral, which you identified some capital projects that were to be done. So considering that this is the second year we submitted this grant application, considering that you viewed the school, considering that it's 100% the county government's responsibility to build and maintain school buildings, you need to be figuring out how to pay for it. This gives us, as a taxpayer, which I am as well, and my tax bill went up 20% on the properties I have in the Western M. This gives us the ability for things that we have to fund and have to do. Instead of spending 84 million, we could spend 30 million. And for both projects, it gives the taxpayer the opportunity to not have to pay the 52, but also to pocket that additional $10 million for the middle school. It's our job to make the recommendations as a fiduciary of the school system as to what needs to be done. I don't think that there's anyone that should be arguing the fact that Oakboro is falling down, the fact that we have students in that school, the fact that there was $30,000 worth of lumber to create 2 fire egresses so that when it falls down, the staff and students can get out. But one penny now generates, according to the recommended budget, $945,225 on almost a $10 billion tax base. As of 2024 audited budget, we had about $37 million in unidentified, let's see, what was it called? $36.8 million of unassigned fund balance. We have no long-term debt in the county. We can borrow via bonds $543 million. So, with a $5.5 million revenue increase expected in the recommended budget, about 600,000 of that you noted was for the Indy driveway, which will cover, I think, about half of that. Then, my ask as a taxpayer is that the county government start figuring out how they're going to fund the school system.
I think my
Mm-hmm.
I think my concern with this is I know that we brought the um, same from last year with the new replacement Oakboro School and the addition to West Stanley Middle. Okay, it was denied. Okay, and denied for, well, I remember with Miss Crump, I remember standing in West Stanley High School as we were visiting one time out there at that school, and I know you said to me, "Will you meet with us? Will you meet with us?" And my answer to you was, "Yes, ma'am, we will." Okay, so we are meeting with you, and then I think Mr. Hatley, you have asked. I think
Mm-hmm.
you were the one really who asked a lot about the studies and information, anything that we had, will we make sure we provide all of that for you? Mr. King, it might have been you that even asked for more studies done. We've done 2 studies by the experts. We're not the experts. They are the experts. We've had that done. We've done everything
that you had asked us to do. And I think my question, as we start to talk about how we're going to pay for something, my question is, you knew that we were coming back with this. That's not a shocker. That can't be a shocker for any commissioner sitting there. You knew we were going to come back with the needs-based grant, and you knew we were going to come back with everything that you asked us to do. The money that we spent on the 2 studies done, um, with an architect. And I am proud of our board that we moved forward with our architect. We moved forward with the studies so that we had all that information to provide for you. So, again, my question is, have you, in the last year, knowing we were coming at you, you knew we had to, have you put in your budget, have you added in your budget anywhere how you were going to pay for this? Because you've had a year. You've had 1 year.
I'm grateful that you all invited us. But as I recall last year, we asked for the superintendent and we asked for school board members to be present so we could ask questions. No one showed up.
Okay. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. We've sat right here on this with many of us, and we've been in discussions for over 3 years with commissioners in committees. We've been in committees for over 3 years. This isn't something that's new. And I wasn't saying that, Mr. Lawhon, in any attacking mode. I was saying that I remember we did not meet with you. And Miss Crump asked me, standing in the halls of West Stanley High School, will you meet with us next year? And my answer was, yes, ma'am, we will. What else do we need? Mr. Mr. Hatley asked, can you provide us all the information? Again, I may be wrong with Mr. King, but I thought it was Mr. King that asked about the studies being done. We've done 2. And I know that you have known that we've been working on this. It's not a shocker. And again, the fact that you knew we were going to come back and ask for the exact same thing. Now, what we have better prepared for you is Ashley from Mosley, Mr. Miller from Numerex. And everything that they have, you've had it, you've got it. Everything that they have put together aligns with the number one priority, with safety included. And we have to include safety. And I see you looking at me, Mr. Mills, because we are teachers. Safety is number one importance for our children. So Oakboro is the priority. Could we not go with West Stanley Middle? Well, I have my West Stanley Middle School teachers back there, and they're probably going to look at me and they're going to get me when I say this. If we had to, we could pull in more mobile units. But we can't do that at Oakboro. Oakboro has to be the number one. And I want to ask um, Ashley. Ashley, will you address this? Will you address what we most likely will get from the state when we apply for the needs-based grant? Are they going to, if we just take out and say, let's do West Stanley Middle, or I'm thinking our chances are pretty slim to none for that. They look for what?
They look for major needs, so things like deteriorating campuses, how they specifically address needs related to safety, uh, space needs. This addresses things related to capacity and safety, critical deficiencies related to the building, related to learning spaces, related to many things that the building is doing. When you're spending that money, and that's obviously before I came on the scene, but if you're spending that money just to make a building safe, the state does not want you spending money on things that are just like you shouldn't be thinking about. And so when you're spending those kind of funds and you can put that in your application, those are the kind of things they want to know that this will eliminate. It will eliminate the heartache of how you keep the building just operating versus being able to do the things that a school building is supposed to do, which is provide a safe environment for learning for students and a safe environment for the staff. So that checks more boxes than an addition. I'm not saying that there aren't needs related to the middle school. There are. It's just that there are criteria and there are more things checked with Oakboro, and the safety is the biggest thing, obviously. So,
Commissioner King has been waiting patiently. You don't forgot that?
I'm gonna be here all night, so whatever. Quick question about the validity of this one study that, and I don't know how, I see how the numbers are computated, but it looks like we got Ridgecrest at a 1.4 that's been closed for 10 years, and Oakboro that's been open, and they're a tenth of a point away from each other. So did we compare apples to apples with that study, or how did we compare that?
I mean, it's as apples to apples as it can be. And, it's all based on looking at what the dollars to bring up to speed. And so there are some square footage differences obviously related to that. But yeah, it is an apples to apples. There are some major system issues at Oakboro that are, I hate to say, comparative to a system that isn't functioning and may need full replacement at a school that's closed.
Right. I mean, it's just, to me, it just seems weird we hadn't spent any maintenance money really on Ridgecrest to amount to anything in 10 years, and it's still as good as Oakboro is today, and that's just strange. But the other question, yeah, but the other question is, and I understand y'all are a 7-person board just like we are, and you have to go with majority and all that. But do y'all feel like the plan that y'all presented to us tonight is the best plan across the board? That there's nothing else that we should look at? I mean, I don't know how the rest of your board feels. I mean, I've heard several of you speak, but I hadn't heard some of you speak, and I want to know what everybody's thoughts is. Is this the best plan for everything going forward? I mean, before we make a vote, I want to hear from everybody. I want to know, is this what you believe in? Because this is a lot of money to spend, and not everybody's buying.
I can say for myself that we look at data. That's what you look at. You look at your data. You look at the studies that have been done. They are your experts. Now I can make Linda study. I'm not the expert. Mr. Gray and our STEM coach, Miss Crawford, are back there, other teachers that they know exactly how the school itself is going to work. And they also know if you need to ask, what's the condition of the school? What do they need for that to be a modern, conducive learning environment for a STEM program? They can answer that question, and your other Oakboro teachers that are sitting there. But I, I, I'm not willing to go pay for another study when we've used Numeric study and we've used Mosley architects, who are the best at what they do, and they have given us their recommendation.
Well, the board has voted.
We voted.
We did. Just a point of clarification, and I'll just speak. Last year's grant application was just a 5% match, didn't have the 30 million price tag added onto that. So that is the difference in last year and this year. So there are some differences in the two sets of applications. I'll just be upfront about that. Last year we were just asking for the 5% match for either of the two projects or both projects to be submitted. They were not submitted as a joint project. But to Mr. King's question, and to Mr. Mills' comment, we have a lot of schools that have a lot of needs. And I'm not going to argue that Oakboro doesn't have needs or that West Henley Middle doesn't have needs. My concern and my question to the commissioners are, if this application goes through and if we do spend 30 something million dollars, what does that mean 8, 9, 10, 12 years down the road for the rest of the schools in this county that need improvements. We have growing issues in the Albemarle area. They're building and clearing out new property daily, just about around town. So for me, that's the situation. If we go forward with this, we're putting a lot of eggs in one basket in the western end of the county. And I'm not saying that that part of the county is not growing and those schools don't have needs, because they do. But we have 23 campuses, and I'm sure if we talk to 23 different principals and 23 different schools, there are things that need improvements, because as Miss Whitaker said earlier, we haven't really done a lot of big projects other than just small band-aids. So that is a concern for me. I don't know if Mr. Lucas can kind of speak to what that commitment would look like going in the future, but that is a question that I had. So
Answer is, what's the board's appetite for more tax increases? Because
Well, this is
that you're right in that there are 23 schools. There's, schools in the southern part of the county. There's schools in the northern part of the county. Schools in the central part of the county. These grants only address the western area of the county, and the taxpayers across the county would be that tax increase would affect everyone, not just folks in the western area of the county. So they would carry this burden, but really wouldn't see any improvements to their schools for the foreseeable future, unless the board decided that they were going to take on additional debt. But I think our board's very concerned about the tax increases that, there's a lot of folks in this community that can't afford it. There's a lot of folks on fixed income. I mean, the numbers show that you got a lot of an aging population in our community, and the prices, their values of their homes keep going up, because we get a lot of folks from the northern part of the country moving down here, paying astronomical prices for housing, and it's driving up the market rates of these homes, and it's creating a problem for the folks that are on fixed income and the elderly in our community, and it just puts a lot of pressure. And I think our board's been pretty committed to trying to keep the tax rate the same. My personal opinion is that our board is trying to address these issues, and I think they would agree with you that there's issues in many schools. Again, there is a difference between this year's application and last year's application. You weren't asking us to fill a $33 million gap. I think the other, issue is, I don't think, yes, our board knew you all would approach us, but I think there's just disagreement on how you skin the cat. Is there a more affordable way to address the growth issues? Could additions at schools like Locust? We did addition at Endy, an addition at Oakboro. Could those things be done, that are more cost effective and don't require tax increase? I don't know, but we don't know the answer to this question because that information hasn't come forward. There's just been one solution. And I think our board is trying to better understand, are there other potential solutions? Unfortunately, though, we're at this point where we get this stuff in September and we're forced to make a decision within a week or two. And that's not fair to this group, in my opinion.
And I want to make it clear, I'm not against the needs-based grant. It is a good return for the investment put in. We're obviously getting a big chunk of money for a small, relatively small portion put in. Let me say it that way. And I'm not saying that the western end of the county doesn't have needs. I have concern that we have we have big needs across the county. The western end has the biggest need right now, but those needs are not going to go away in the next 8 to 10 years while we're building in the western end and doing this thing if this all goes through. So
Yeah, Ashley, I don't know. I hope you don't mind me calling you Ashley, but these are two different need-based grants, correct?
Yes, it goes in as two separate applications with a cover that binds them together.
But the likelihood of getting the one grant, if you do just say Oakburn,
Hmm.
is probably you're not going to get it unless you have the middle school in there also. Is that correct?
No, the other way around. So
Okay.
I think the middle school has lower ranking than Oakboro has, just based on their criteria that they've
Okay.
set forth.
All right. The one thing I think, Mr. List, you had brought up about, it is our responsibility to keep up the schools and stuff. And Commissioner King brought up a point that I'm looking at Oakboro STEM Elementary K-8 and then Ridgecrest. And if you look at the red versus the red on the Ridgecrest side, that Ridgecrest is in much better shape than Oakboro is. And then that school was closed 13 years ago. And when that school was closed, we owed $1.9 million on the renovations of that school. So I think we're trying to keep them up, but um, it's tough. And Miss Gibson, the thing that we talked about, I think maybe 2 years ago, is an additional quarter-cent sales tax. And County Manager Lucas said that it brought in $2.8 million. And if you do another additional quarter-cent sales tax, that's going to bring in over $5 million, which would pay the debt service for the $30 million overrun. And I don't know who said about kicking the can. Maybe Chairman Whitaker did, about kicking the can down the road. The longer we wait to implement this, and nobody really knows a quarter-cent sales tax that even comes off, and it's a 3 to 4 cent property tax, and people do notice that. As Commissioner Lawhon said, when you get that tax bill, you notice that. But when you go to store to buy a drink and a cheese cracker, you don't know that quarter-cent sales tax is even on there.
Right.
I think we need to try to work together, and it doesn't have really anything to do with this needs-based grant right now, but we need to try to work together to soften that blow. And I think that's where we've got to do. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm just gonna tell a sea story. That's what old sailors do. One of my favorite things to do in submarine schools, they do damage control training. They put you in a wet room, and then they have a bunch of pipes, big pipes and big little pipes, and these pipes have holes in them. So they turn the water on 200, 300 psi, and your task is to close up the big holes first, so you don't sink. And it was just a really cool experience. Well, the Numerex uh, forecast for this year for West Stanley Middle School 642. On day 5, there was 699, and the last number I heard was 704. So my point is this: that if we can't get the grant for that, that's fine. But to me, there's an emergent, there's a big pipe leaking water right now. It's the middle school. I would love to see a new Oakboro. I'd love to see a new Albemarle East Albemarle. I'd love to see all these other things. But to me, the immediate, the urgent thing that needs to be adjusted is that West Stanley Middle is fed by Locust, it's fed by Andy, and it's fed by Stanfield, 3 schools that are already pushing the numbers. Where if we're 115 over now, it's probably worse than that. I don't have the latest ADM, but if we're 115 kids over at West Middle, where are we going to be next year? 200 kids over? To me, that is where we need to be. You know, the sticking the thrust of it. And I do want to say one more thing to our county commissioners. I appreciate y'all coming through with the money for Andy. That addition is fantastic, and it did relieve some of the pressure on the western end. So that's all I got.
Do we have a study on what it would take? Dustin said that the building's falling, the walls are falling, it's the veneer falling, to replace the veneer on that school. And then we could maybe look at the middle school project and
That might be an Ashley question.
Well, when she addresses or you address that, will you address the shape of Ridgecrest as well? Because I think that came up in Commissioner Effort's question that they're,
Right. So I think both of those schools, the amount of money that would need to be pumped in to renovate those, both Ridgecrest and Oakboro, um, you know, we I've presented at $450 to have a brand new school. You're looking at about $400 a square foot just to have the same outside walls that stand up and the same square footage on the inside. So,
well, I'll have to disagree with that. It's the veneer in the roof is the issue with that school. I mean, there's other issues, I'm sure, but the main safety issue is getting the roof where it's dry and not leaking, and then the veneer where it's not, the brick veneer not falling off the building.
I think so.
well, there's a
Yeah, yeah,
there's a
veneer.
pretty extensive report on that. Uh, go ahead, Mr. Brent.
See, we need all this stuff.
Yeah.
We need all, and we need to know what y'all's plan 5, 10 years down the road for the northern end, southern end, how are we gonna make, are we gonna put all our eggs in one basket and let the other part fall apart, or do y'all have a plan? So
There's
we're
a
not,
phase two
we're
with
not
the
taxing our
architect that
people
the board
yet,
didn't
and
approve
we're still
that,
gonna help when there's needs at the other end.
yeah. No, I agree. I think I totally agree with you, Trent, Commissioner Hatley. There's a phase two to Mosley's plan. The board approved phase one, which was the western end, because on the two demographic studies we did from 22, 23, and then 24, 25, it's clear and obvious that we've got to address those needs. Uh, the phase two goes to really the rest of the county, looks at the high schools, looks at the building, and comes back with a very similar report across everything else. I think that yes, we need to work together, but it seems a struggle out of your board to do $30 million, and we're talking about tax increases. Then if the number comes back to $100 million for the rest of the county, my question as a taxpayer, what is your board doing? You know, in this,
One rebuttal on that. This isn't our only fish to fry.
I
We're looking
understand.
at a 30, 40 million
You
jail
have a
project.
tough job, a $24 million
We got-
jail noted in
We
the
got
county
Bill
managers.
182 that took away our upzone ability
Yep.
and is allowing these developers to come in and strip us and keep us from funding y'all like we need to.
Yeah.
We need to be working on that. We all need, everybody in this room needs to be working on that.
Yep.
And,
So
Rob telling
it's,
us how we need to run our business is not working out very well.
I just want to quote a couple, if I may.
The board member here has talked quite a bit. I think it's the commissioner's turn. Guys,
Hey,
quick.
no, can we stop? Could Mr. Lewis finish what he was talking before he answered some questions for Mr. Hatley, and then we could go to you, Mr. Lucas, if
I'll
that's
go
okay?
whenever our board asks me to go, so.
No. I know you were in the middle of telling something. And
Go ahead.
we went-
No, I agree with.
Trent had some questions or remarks.
That is not how we treat the public. That is not how we treat the public.
May I go, Madam Chair? I totally agree with Commissioner Efer, Commissioner Lawhon, Commissioner Hatley. Mr. Lucas has a very tough job, and so do you. I don't envy all the departments and entities that you have to fund, and I know that it's pretty extensive. And looking at the recommended budget, $24 million expected project estimated for the jail, $40 million for the wastewater treatment plant. I know that you guys have, I would agree with going slightly above revenue neutral because you've got to pay for these things. I just want to note here, a commissioner in the campaign that spoke to the Stanley News and Press that says, quote, our county has good fund balances and a good credit rating. We will seek grants whenever they are available. Our county has the capacity to borrow money for these projects, staying in acceptable margins as required by state. That was 2 years ago. Another commissioner says, I'm going to quote here. And I'm going to read out of the paragraph here. We have to find a way to stop band-aiding and come up with real solutions for long-term positive effect. Our school system is a prime example of what happens when you neglect an item for long periods of time. We find ourselves in a situation where we have school buildings at or over 100 years old, which is what we're discussing. Another commissioner here talking in the meeting last year that a few of you have referenced, likened the grants to a recent proposal commissioners received in a board work session about a new county jail, saying that the county hired an architect to come in and show us options. And in the context of that conversation was about the jail when the architect and the commissioner wanted to see an architect plan and an architect design. Another commissioner voted in 2016 to reopen Oak Borough, along with other school board members. So at that time, I would make an assumption here that the commissioner understood the extent of the aging and damage at Oak Borough, but saw the need for the community that that community needed a school building. And I would ask that the same commissioners see that need now, that yes, that Oakboro needs that school. The school system, the county needs to alleviate problems. We need to help the taxpayer longer term. And this grant, as noted by commissioners here, that will seek it whenever, I would agree with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I've been asked by the board chair to explain our general fund balance and how that works. I think it was mentioned that we had 36 million at the end of 23, 24 and in unassigned fund balance. And that could have very well been the case. Just keep in mind that was 2 fiscal years ago, because now we're in 25, 26. And then since that time, we've spent $4 million on Indy that we paid cash for, didn't borrow any money. Spent $3.5 million on a livestock arena for our agriculture and economic development efforts. We spent $1.5 million on a water line at community college for the trades facility. Spent almost $1 million for the West Stanley Senior Center. $2.2 million for a jail design. And $1 million on design for a 911 emergency services facility, all cash. We didn't borrow a dime of that money. It's $12.5 million from that 36 million that you referenced. Keep in mind, the LGC requires counties that we match the average of our peer counties in terms of what that unassigned fund balance of our available budget. And right now, that averages anywhere from 30 to 35%, and it fluctuates on an annual basis. But 36 million on $100 million is roughly 36%. And so we're right there with our average peers and what the LGC requires us to have. And we don't really have 36 million anymore, because we've spent $12.5 million in the last 2 years out of our general fund. And that was based on things our board said, we're not going to borrow money. We've got this money and we're going to spend it. And we have. We allocated some to you, the community college, agribusiness, our public safety efforts. And so we've spread it around to many needs that this board has. And so I think it's just important. I think people see that big number and like, oh, they got a whole bunch of money. We do have money and we do have a good fund balance, but we're required by the local government commission, which is an oversight entity for the state, that we maintain the average of our peers in terms of unassigned fund balance. And that is somewhere between 30 and 32%. When you have $100 million budget, you're in the 30 million range. We have to have that, or we get a letter stating you need to get your fund balance up. So I think it's important that folks understand that our board's just not sitting on pots of money and doing nothing with it. They do understand that if that fund balance gets too high, we use that cash to take care of some capital items, so we don't put that burden on taxpayers. They're very sensitive to making sure we don't do that. So I just wanted to provide that clarification for the public.
Anybody else have any comments?
I do. I do. I mean, first of all, again, to Mr. Lawhon, I never, if I said anything that came across as disrespectful or whatever to you in talking earlier, that wasn't meant to be that way, or to any of you, because I appreciate you being here and us being able to. I think we all have the same goal, and the same goal is to have the best possible schools, education, curriculum that teachers, and retaining teachers that we possibly can in our system. Somebody mentioned Indy. If you haven't had a chance to go out to Indy, go in the new building and then go into the older part. And I want you to tell me what you noticed, because, well, I'll tell you what you'll notice. Mr. Benton, you might have to help me with this, but it just the air control, the air quality, and the breathing, and just it is so different. When you walk to the older section, immediately you feel something different. And I know that that's something that I think about with our older school, with Oakboro. Okay. I've been in Oakboro. I feel that same breathing quality, okay, in the oldness of that school. But Oakboro, the reason why Oakboro is the top priority, that is your school that is going to alleviate your overcrowding. And this is why the resolutions, I believe, were sent in. It's going to alleviate the overcrowding at Stanfield, at Locust, at, why am I leaving off? It's going to alleviate the crowding at Locust, Stanfield, and and Oakboro, well, itself. But that's going to give us many years, 2020, 2032, 33, as we are able to um, decide then, I mean, what's something that when we approach um, getting up those higher numbers of population, but we're going to be good if we can do that to alleviate that and in those towns. And I know that those towns and townships look at things also, and I don't know if this has been mentioned. I know enough to know that when you look at economic development that is coming into your area, you're looking at businesses coming into your area, they're going to look for the, they're going to look at Stanley County Schools. They're going to look at your facilities. What do they see when they see the facility of Oakboro? West Stanley Middle, as I said, is much newer. Um, I am so glad the teachers are here and the administration's here. But just to do a West Stanley Middle and not even do an Oakboro, that seems like something that I would not want to wait 3 years now before we could come back and submit a grant application for a brand new replacement or brand new school. That puts us further behind. And then we have a phase 2 coming up. So I know I've got some Albemarle people in here. I've seen you. That's going to address you. That's addressing you in the phase 2. And again, I hate that phrase of kicking the can down the road. When people used to say that to me, I just, I hate it. But as long as I've been on this board, and Ms. Crump, we came on the board at the same time, Ms. Watson, we came on the board at the same time. I look and think, what have we done that all I can sit back and think the can continues to kick or be kicked further down the road. If we do not if we do not do a replacement school at Oakboro, then this is going to put everything else that we need that's coming up in 5 years, in 10 years, whatever, that long range planning, that is pushing it further down the road. So for my Albemarle people in here, understand that we know there's needs. We know the shape of the schools. We know curriculum. All of that is a part of the plan. But I'm going to go back to Ashley. Ashley, if you don't mind, I'm going to come back to you with, if you will explain one more time to us, why is Oakboro the number one? And does it seem like that states will award that replacement school over just simply an addition?
Madam Chair, before Ashley, can I ask a question? As Ms. Gibson stated, she's talking about kicking the can and um projections, but by this schedule, Oakboro, if this gets approved and submitted and awarded, Oakboro would not be done until 2028. And then I had asked Mr. Lucas earlier what the county would be able to bounce back after a $30 million commitment. And he's saying it's going to take a while without implementing a lot of taxes. But that would be up to his board. But essentially, we are, by doing this, sort of kicking the can on phase 2 for at least until 2028 or later because there's no way. And so I just want to be very clear about the holdup personally is because I'm not saying we don't need it. We really need it at more than 2 campuses. We need it at 10, 12 campuses. But we will be pushing other projects out with such a big commitment for just 2 projects.
You know, I look at the cost too. I look at the cost too with what the cost would have been if we had been awarded the grant. I know we weren't awarded the grant, so it's not meaning what I'm wanting to dwell on, but how did that cost go up where we could have been opening the doors to a brand new Oakboro Elementary School this coming year? Okay, so what would that cost have looked like compared to now when it's $450 a square foot?
We wouldn't have been able to
Okay.
do that because the application was only for the
Well, it would have been the
5%.
following year.
Yeah, it would have had to have had.
Okay.
So, I will answer the question that's been asked, but also I don't think I explained, and it's been referenced a few times, so I feel like you as commissioners may not fully understand. So the 3 years is you can apply, and then there's 3 years you have to hold off. So that's why that keeps getting referenced. If you chose to apply again for a project, whether it be in the Albemarle area or wherever, you would have to wait after being awarded for 3 years. The project doesn't necessarily have to be done. It's just that if you are granted the application in the 25-26, then 3 years from that fiscal year, you have the opportunity to apply again. So I just want to cover that so there's no confusion of why the reference of 3 years keeps popping up. To the point of Oakboro standing out again, I cannot say 100% what applications get approved. I am not sitting there. I am not going through, but I know the criteria that is utilized, and I know that they utilize it by checking through and reading through the applications and understanding what the needs are. I can tell you that the Oakboro solving not only the condition of the facility need and the safety that goes with it, but also a capacity need from many different schools. That is another thing that they look like. They look at how does this project affect your county as a whole? And so, this alleviating needs at multiple schools gives it a check mark, if you will. So that goes to, again, there is a need at the middle school, and I'm not saying that that is not a critical need, but it does not check as many boxes and address the deficits related to facilities and to student seats as the elementary school does.
Several notes I've been taking. You were talking earlier about the needs at West Stanley Middle School being science labs and stuff like that. North Stanley Middle School was built at the same time. Do we have those issues at North Stanley Middle School also?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't assessed it, so I can't answer that honestly, but it sounds like yes, that probably is the case.
It's in phase 2.
We would love to hear about that.
That school would be included in phase 2.
Phase two.
Only the
You're not
western
gonna-
end.
We got 20-year loan to pay back before any phase two.
That was my point exactly, Mr.
And,
Garvey.
also, Ridgecrest, remodel it would have the same capacity as the addition that you're gonna put on at Oakmont. That would result in. Also, possibility that which hadn't been looked at, I understand, is changing all those schools back to K-8 schools. And, I think most of the problems that we have capacity wise have been created by the school system, moving kids around from one school to the other for special programs, and stuff like that. First, the next thing, I'm not going to put a $33 million tax debt on the people of the county until they have a say so, whether it be a referendum vote or speaking out. And from the notes I've gotten here, that wasn't even addressed about getting the other folks involved in it. And you were quoting commissioner's remarks. The commissioner's no longer here, but he made a remark one time that bricks and mortar don't teach kids, teachers do. So I thought I'd throw that out too. And, just a lot of things that has not been clear. This doesn't clear up a lot as far as I'm concerned. Um, and that's what I gotta say, but I just feel like there's other ways. I want to help the kids. I want to see them in safe buildings. But I think there's better ways to do it than what we got presented. That's just my opinion.
I would like to
Okay.
say one thing. I do want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for the conversation. You're right, we did talk and said let's talk next time because last year, it's in the past, but that was not the way to move forward. This is, and I do appreciate it. I mean, as you've all stated, and as I know so well because I was on the board, the needs are huge across the county, and we do have to start somewhere. So, I have a lot of thinking to do. We, I have an entire county to represent with my vote, but we have needs that have to be addressed. And I don't want to kick the can down the road anymore. So I want to just say that and put that on the record. So I do appreciate the time and the effort that you put into this.
Thank you, Ms. Crum. I like what you said. We have to start somewhere, and we do. Although the needs are great, we have to start somewhere. I feel like that our board has done their homework. We've done what you asked us to do. We've done studies. We've provided those for you. We asked for questions. We've answered those. I think we have a clear data-driven plan. We've paid for professionals to give us their recommendation. So that's what we need to follow. That's our job. It wasn't our job to tell you guys that we needed a livestock arena or that we needed a new jail. And that was your job because that's what you were elected to do. The needs-based grant, the deadline's October 3rd. That's next Friday. We need a decision from you by the end of this week because that's going to give us time to know what direction we need to go in. So that's 25th, 26th, whichever Thursday, Friday of this week. I guess the question is, do you want to help us build new schools and give us what our county needs and what our students need? Or are we going to sit idle for another 23 years? And are we going to leave this problem for the next generation? Because that's what it's going to be if we don't do something now. Our students can't wait another decade, and our buildings can't wait another decade. We are at a stopping point where we have to make some decisions about our facilities. We thank you for the meeting. Thank you for your time. We enjoy the conversation. We hope it will continue between the two of us. And again, we thank the public also for coming and also those who have joined us live stream. With that, I will entertain a motion for my board to adjourn. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no.